Hello guys, and welcome to a new Broken Arrow video today by me, Vulcan. In this video, I'll be going through some of the most significant changes you can expect when the private test environment becomes the public test environment. Bear in mind, everything you hear me talking about today is subject to change. I just want to stress that it is subject to change. I think a lot of creators haven't said this enough, so I will say it. Things will change. Features, price changes, and adjustments you see today may not make it into the live version of the game, and will be changed based on player feedback when the public test goes live. With all that said, let's get into it. I'm going to start in the armory, and we'll go through the unit changes, then I'm going to demonstrate some in a skirmish, and we'll show off the game mode adjustments as well. So let's switch over to the arsenal, and we'll go through the armory here. I'm going to start with the recon units. So we have snipers now have the ability to sneak. There's this ability up here now called sneak. When a sniper is sneaking, it has 3 stealth in the open. When it's not sneaking, it has 2.5 stealth. So that's basically how it works. It's a toggleable ability. In order to get the 3 stealth on the snipers again, you need to be sneaking. It's not available on standard recon squads at the moment, although that could change in the future. All drones are now 10 HP. So any drone is 10 HP now, including something like the Global Hawk, which is much bigger. Just make sure that they can be one-shot by radar AA, 2-shot by like manpads. Low-level UAVs can be shot like helicopters now, so do bear that in mind. Which means something like the forepost, which doesn't fly very high, can actually be shot out by machine guns. So that's an interesting change, and one that I would actually like to see pushed through to live. So certain squads have also changed. If we move on to infantry, well, a lot of stuff has changed in terms of how things work, but the most drastic is probably the Chernyi getting their numbers back. Not quite to what they were before, I think it was 14, but the squad's a lot bigger. There are changes to some other squads as well, I believe. There's definitely changes to a lot of artillery units, like the Koletsaya has had its smoke taken away on extended range, and instead just has more laser guided rounds than it used to. Kind of level it out with something like the Iron Thunder. So there are a few changes like that to look out for, but I'm not going to go through them all in detail because things are going to change, price adjustments are going to change throughout, and until we know for sure what's going to live, I'm not going to really go into it all that much. I just kind of want to give you guys a high level overview today of what things are changing. Infantry optics is going from 1200 to 1400, and you'll notice that some weapons are going to be longer range than they were before. So I think the AK-74 ammo was probably like a 400 meter range before, and now it's like a 500. Some of the light arms weapons are being adjusted all the time, so bear that in mind. Also, another thing that's changed with infantry is the sprint now helps you leave buildings faster. I think it increases the time it takes to leave a building by 33%. So if you accidentally click sprint before you leave a building, it's actually going to help you get out of the building faster as well now, which I think is a really welcome change, because sometimes when you accidentally click sprint too soon, you kind of waste it. It's really kind of annoying, but at least it's going to kind of help get out of those sticky situations, and it will be used tactically inside a building to get out of a building quickly if you see like a cruise missile coming towards it or something like that. So I really like that change for sure. Moving on to vehicles, we have transports now available to supply infantry. So most sort of APCs and IFVs have some form of resupply. In this case, you can see the BTR-82 has 250 kilograms of supply, which it can use for ammunition and healing. It's not very much. It's probably enough to get like a half health squad back up to full. It also takes longer for infantry to heal up now, so that's worth bearing in mind. There are some that get more, like the bigger the vehicle, generally the more you're getting. So in this case, you're getting 400 in the boomerang. I'm not sure if that goes down if you put the K-17 on it. It actually does. So they have taken that into account. But something like the BMOT is 400 as well, which is going to make these sorts of units a bit more useful. Although I think the BMOT at the moment is currently sneaking back into the meta. So having extra supply with it as well, I think needs to be adjusted a little bit. I think this may be a bit too high. I think this is even too high sometimes. Like it should be maybe like 150 and 300 for big vehicles, something like that. Either way, I do like the change, and it's a new feature that I think is welcome. Moving on, we have tanks having their aim time reduced. So if we go to the gun here, we can see like aim times have been reduced across the board, and also damage has gone up across the board. So for example here, the T90M is dealing 10 damage. Generally what this means is like side shots are way more damage than they used to be, which I think is good. Like punishing side shots more is nice. I'm kind of worried like how that's going to feel with desync still being a problem for now, but either way, good changes to the tanks in my opinion makes them feel much more responsive, and in a server game where you're not feeling desynchronization, it's a nice change for sure. Helicopters have also had their aim time decreased. So they can aim things like the attacker much faster now, which is going to make helicopters more responsive. Personally, I feel like it's a little bit broken when you look at things like the Lemur. For example, with the M28 here, you can get the Lemur missile, and that has an aim time of 1 to 2. I think there's still some adjustment to be done here with these sorts of ATGMs, like especially like Hellfires, like Fire and Forget Hellfires and Lemurs only having 1 to 2 second aim time means they really do dominate SHORAD, which is a bit of a problem. And also on top of that, like helicopters now have improved agility, acceleration, and turn rate. I think they've already introduced some of that to the live build with the Baltic update, but it's, I think, more noticeable on this build. I don't know for sure because we don't have the numbers for that. Anyway, artillery, going back to that, we have changes to mortars. They can now, 81mm mortars specifically, auto fire. So 120mm mortars can't, like the Nonna, for example. You see it's not there. With the Drock, auto fire. And what this does is automatically fire at a single unit or a group of units that's over a certain value. So I'm not sure what the value is. It would be kind of nice to know. But for example, I've seen these automatically fire at Cathay. So it must be like 150 or something like that. And if you have like 3 units of infantry stacked in a building, the mortar might automatically fire at that. But if it's like only 1 in a building, then it won't. So it's something that you're still going to have to micro your mortar fire for, especially if you want to deal with like singular HGMs in buildings. But it will help you counter blobbing a little bit. So interesting change there. We have price changes across the board for all of the artillery. You'll see the Koletsai here that I mentioned earlier is a lot more expensive than it used to be. A good example is the Brutus. The Brutus is way more expensive than it used to be. See, it's 200, and that's before you give it guided rounds. Guided rounds is now 250 points for the Brutus. So quite expensive, especially considering it is quite easy to kill. Another thing to bear in mind is that, yeah, other than generally artillery being more expensive, they can fire further now. So the range has gone up across the board. I don't know if this will stay the same. It will probably get changed at some point. A 5,500 meter range for the Iron Thunder now. Already was pretty dominant before. I feel like this is maybe a little bit too much in my opinion. Yeah, that's going to be a difficult one to sort of justify, I think. The aim time has been increased, so I think this is something that's similar to live again, where aim time is a lot slower than it used to be. So artillery is less responsive, which is, I think, generally a good thing. You don't want to just constantly be pounded by these. I mean, you can really punish someone if they're like not microing their units and moving around, but if they are, you don't want to be like randomly hit by a laser munition like midway through your driving, because it's kind of annoying, right? But I guess it depends. 16 to 20 seconds is a pretty long time. Maybe it can be adjusted. Rocket artillery has had a massive nerf. So I think it's already nerfed a little bit with aim time in the live build. But for example, the TOS has a really long reload time now. So for example, the thermobaric missiles here, or the thermobaric rockets, 220. They have a resupply time of 12. So in order to resupply 30, it's 30 times 12 now. And then you got like the Smersh, for example, both of them actually, the high explosive warheads and the HE guided warheads are 40 seconds per missile. So it's like an 8-minute reload on the Tornado now. So you're going to be seeing like full barrages a lot less. People are going to be using a lot more half barrages, or they're going to be using like a full barrage and just selling it and then buying it back like second point through the game, something like that. Because you can see here that the time to sell or return to deck is actually like 12, almost 13 minutes. So if you do fire it and sell it, it's going to be quite a while till you can get it again. So do bear that in mind. That has changed quite significantly. All right, moving on to anti-air. So radar AA has been kind of reduced, I think, overall in terms of range, but that is more to allow the role of air superiority fighters. So air superiority fighters are going to be much more important for shooting down enemy aircraft than they were before. But AA should hit more often than it used to. I think it's generally more accurate now. Aim time on AA has been reduced, so they will fire a lot quicker. You can see that it's like 0 to 1 second here. And I think the firing animation of something like the S300 has been made so it fires like basically instantly. It doesn't have the little pop up and then fire. It just goes whoosh straight out of the tube towards the enemy. Other things, SHORAD has been sort of made a little bit better, but also worse. Like turrets move a lot faster now. You might see it in the animation in the armory, but basically turrets can spin a lot faster to track planes, and that's all very well, but they also made it so that SHORAD only gets 1 times range increase with radar. So like the high altitude range in this case for the Barusa is 1,000 meters, and it's the same with radar on, which is kind of sad. It's not going to be hitting anything really, so I think that needs a bit of adjustment as well. AA now prioritizes self-defense. So before you might have seen, like, say you got 2 Patriots, one Patriot will try and defend the other Patriot, and then the Patriot that fired will miss the missile, and then it will hit the other Patriot that wasn't defending itself, and that's really frustrating. So they've changed the way that it works, where AA will try and prioritize its own self-defense, which is good, because it means you'll lose less AA to like your other AA missing, basically. And also another thing to note in this build is that radar optics or like radar, turning radar on increases your optics against high altitude units, which means generally speaking, you're going to be seeing an aircraft before you shoot at it, giving your AA more time to aim, assuming that it's not obviously blocked by line of sight or something like that. So yeah, hopefully that clears that up. So non-radar AA, and that's another thing is, well, radar AA can't one-shot anymore. Damage has been reduced to 19 on something like the Ante. I think it was like over 20 before, allowing you to basically one-bang aircraft. I really miss being able to one-bang aircraft personally. I can kind of see why they wanted to remove it, but I feel like it's like super satisfying when you can just one bang those annoying like aircraft if people are being silly and just like flying straight towards your anti-air. Whereas now it feels like you can fly in and almost always get your payload off, and then you'll die, right? You're guaranteed to die, which wasn't the case before, but you're almost guaranteed to get the payload off, which makes sort of airplanes a bit more like suicidal, which I don't think I like the feel of. Obviously, like making these one shot would make aircraft more suicidal, but then they'd have to adjust other things again. I don't know. Either way, it's not as satisfying anymore, is what I will say, feel wise. Radar AA, another thing to note, short range value or like low range altitude is much shorter now. So before it would be like 1.25 or something like that, which would increase the low altitude range from like 3,000 to like, I don't know, 3,600 or something. Whereas now it's only 1 time, so it's like 3,000. So low altitude aircraft are surviving a lot more, including airdrops and just generally CAS. So things like A-10s and Su-35s have been changed dramatically because of this. They are a lot harder to shoot down with radar AA, and you rely a lot more on SHORAD, but SHORAD also has less range against high altitude targets, so it's a bit of a weird one. And CAS planes have been buffed in general as well, so that they can fire a lot of munitions without a strafing run. So they can fire Mavericks now if they're just flying at low altitude. They don't need to have a strafing run order. And also they can fire like rockets or like their main gun if they're like aligned correctly. And these things are also increased in agility, so they're much easier to control, which makes these very, very strong at the moment, but I imagine there will be adjustments to that as well. Okay, so with all of that said, moving on to aircraft. So aircraft fuel times have been somewhat increased. For some aircraft, I think it's generally like the reason for that is afterburn fuel. So usually afterburning would increase consumption by 3 times, but now it only increases consumption by 2 times. So afterburning is a lot better than it used to be, allowing you to stay in the air for longer. I do think things like the Fighting Falcon need their fuel increase from 120. I just clicked on it to check them in the video, but like this is a good example. The F-18D is only 120 seconds, and these still burn out of fuel before they can get out of the map, which is and I'm talking, you bring them in for an airstrike, you give them the airstrike order straight away, and they're almost out of fuel by the time they're leaving. It's really, really bad. So yeah, these need a bit of adjustment. Fuel needs changing for sure. Plane weapon costs have been standardized. So for example, like the JDAM here, 4 GBU 54 L JDAM 500 pounds will be the same cost, like 50 cost, on every aircraft now that has access to them. So that's kind of been standardized across the whole board, and they have adjusted the price of airframes as well. Then we have plane rearm time is now based on their weapons and not the price. So, for example, because this has 24 JASSMs, it has a return time of 23 minutes if you return it to the deck with all of them, like without firing. I assume it's still 16 minutes and 20 seconds. So yeah, don't accidentally buy and sell your aircraft because it will cost you a lot of time. But yeah, 23 minutes if you're using it all up. That's a long time. So you're going to have basically one chance to use these, and then you're going to have to sort of make the most out of them and then kind of bring them back in very late into the game, like use them very early in the game, very late in the game, or just like use them midway through the game and only use them once. That's kind of like your choices. Same goes for the nuke. The nuke is now 25 minutes, so you can use one like within the first 5 minutes and you'll be able to get one in again by the end of the game, or you're just using it once per game, basically. So nukes are going to be completely different in the way that they're played, and you may have to have more than one person on your team with a nuke now in order to get value out of nukes, if that's kind of like part of your strategy. Another thing to note, actually, you might think like, oh, you're paying 800 points for 24 JASSMs and you can only use it once in a game. But the way that these work is a lot easier now, where they automatically sort of circle on the back of the map, and when you give them orders, I'll show this in game in a bit, but when you give orders, they just keep circling and then firing the cruise missiles at max range, so they don't like fly towards the target when you use a cruise missile. So that's going to be really, really useful. All right, I think that's the majority of the stuff on the armory that I wanted to mention. I'm just going to quickly go over to my deck, and we'll jump into like my VDV mech deck. This is a good example of availability changes. So there's been quite a lot of availability changes. For example, snipers, you can only get 2 on a card now. HGMs, only 2 on a card. Something like the Okonomachiki, which is like sort of assault squads, they only have like 3 on a card. Special forces are only 2 on a card. You can see that like Dush, you can't get 8 on a card now, you can only get 6 on a card. So there's been a lot of availability changes for infantry and snipers, HGMs, and also artillery. You see like Malkas, you can't get 3 anymore, you can only get 2. And that goes the same for like Iron Thunders and such. Vassaloks are capped at 3. Basically there is like you can see Akatsai is 4, which is actually quite a lot. But Tolpans is at 3. So there's a lot of availability changes that are worth sort of looking into when you get your hands on this yourself, but it's not a big deal at the moment. All right, let's jump into a game, shall we? We're gonna just jump into a skirmish game. I'm jumping into Chernikovsky district because it is a map that has been adjusted. I'm just gonna leave it on medium difficulty. We'll let the AI do their thing. This map has been adjusted for flags slightly, so you'll see that as we jump in. And there will be a bunch of other maps that have changed, like they've done like a 90-degree version of the dam map, so you play it like on the side. It's interesting. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of it. There is also changes to a couple of other maps, like Oil Refinery. They've moved the map from the Oil Refinery to the city side. I'm really hoping that there's going to be like maps where there's both types, like so on the Oil Refinery one, for example, there's that big city on the side. It'd be nice if you had a map on the Oil Refinery and a map on the city, and they just made that 2 separate maps. Anyway, it doesn't look like too much has changed here on this map, but either way, let's go ahead and show you some stuff at the beginning. So ASF is going to be way more prevalent. Having more than one ASF in your deck is definitely something I'd recommend, but I've just kind of set up my deck like this on purpose to show off some of the different changes. I could show you CAS at some point as well, but yeah, ASF lasts way longer, way more important than it used to be, because your AA is going to be like a lot less reliable, or at least a lot less range. So if you really want to stop an airstrike from happening, you're going to have to shoot it down with an aircraft. If you want to shoot down an aircraft after it's bombed, then that's the AA job, basically. It's kind of how it works. You can get lucky sometimes and shoot stuff down before airstrikes, but it's usually because your opponent's being a bit silly. Anyway, we'll see the AI bring in a bunch of stuff shortly. Another thing to note is that like aircraft, for example, like the Su-34, I've set it up with just bombs. There's no minimum range on bombing strikes anymore. Like when you give a bombing order like this, it doesn't like automatically stretch it out based on the number of bombs there is. So you can have like any length bombing run, and that will be really, really concentrated. So in this case, I've got 34 250 kilogram bombs, and they're all going to drop in this one little square, because there's no minimum anymore. Usually this would be like spread out to maybe like here in a long line, but now you can just drop them all on one spot, and that's going to be pretty brutal. Viper coming out there from the AI and shooting me down. We can get my Su-35 to try and deal with that. You'll notice that like AA in general and air-to-air weapons are more reliable than they used to be, so that's something that's interesting. And then the other thing, Su-57, I actually just wanted to try this out myself while we were doing the video. But if you do cruise missiles, say I'm doing them at max range, I just want to put them on the road up here. So that's just going to fire immediately because that was in range already. I'm just curious if it will keep flying towards the target. It looked like it was. It might just be a tactical bomber thing. I'm just gonna kill that. Or not. I'm going to save some points and we'll bring up the Tupolev 160, and I assume that's going to be the one that kind of floats to the back of the map. The other thing about these bombers now is they fly higher than they used to, so you'll be able to like see them from further away. I think it's like more of a buff to AA than anything else, to stop people from like using the big cab bombers too much. That's what it kind of feels like. Anyway, if I give this an order to fire like 12 cruise missiles, in theory what it should do is sort of circle the back of the map. It's not going to overextend on purpose. It's just going to keep firing them, and they're going to circle around and head towards their target. You see what I mean? Instead of it just like suicide running towards the enemy. The AI both brought in F-18s at exactly the same time, so it was actually 2 F-18s there next to each other. So yeah, that's a lot of the sort of air stuff showing off. I'm just going to bring in some mortars. And there's a couple things I can show you with like the Vasalogs. So a Vasalog, when you press T, you'll see now in the bottom right, it shows you exactly how many shots will be in a salvo. I really like this. Great quality of life improvement for sure. And you can also, of course, put the auto fire on. Now, auto fire requires you to be in range for them to fire, and it requires the enemy to have a certain like cost value before it fires. So if you've got a bunch of infantry stacked on each other, the Vasalogs will fire. If there's like a high value unit that you can damage, then it will also fire at those as well. So that's something to bear in mind. My Vasalogs, they're going to get machine gun kills onto these pilots. It's kind of funny. Alright, anything else? Supply radius is smaller. So if I bring in a supply here, you'll see that the supply radius is slightly smaller than it used to be. I think it's like reduced by like 25% or something. It's not too noticeable, but in certain situations where like you put it here and you maybe want to sort of use the courtyard to, or like you say you put it here and you want to use the courtyard to repair, you have to get a little bit closer to the building. In situations like this big building, where you put supply is going to matter a lot more than it used to, because before it would just be able to like cover both, but now it might only be able to cover 1/4, for example. That's kind of like how you got to see that one. There is helicopters as well. Let me just get the Lemurs out. The Lemurs are super scary at the moment. I'm just gonna bring out a Lemur here, and we'll go dumpster some of this AI. Gonna get some more ammo for my ante there. The helicopters are like super agile. Especially like at low altitude, they're pretty good. Things like the Venom are really agile. So you can micro these through the middle of buildings and stuff really well. We're back. The game had a little bit of a hiccup. Mi-28. I'll have fun going through the buildings here, for example, and we can kind of micro it between the buildings much easier than we could before. Because before it would like try and fly over the buildings, whereas now you can be way more sneaky with the helicopters, but it can be very obnoxious, that's for sure. An airdrop actually coming in from the AI. The AI is absolutely wild in this game. Okay, so Mi-28, you can see how fast it's aiming there, and it's just going to keep bopping loads of stuff now. And these are Lemurs, so they have HE warheads, which allows them to target infantry. Let me just bring the Vasalogs over to the right and we'll try out their auto fire. The air also likes to dive the helicopters, which I think is something that's certainly going to be happening a lot more in this PTE version, because SHORAD's going to be like less reliable. You see I put them on auto fire and they've auto targeted these troopers because they're stacked. They're just going to start blasting away HE rounds, and that should help us kill a couple of those. And just going to keep firing. They're technically like aiming again, right? So 35 died. They have to have line of sight on something, I think, in order to target it. So now that we've lost line of sight, that's not going to be as good as it was before. But you kind of get the gist of how they work. I don't think it would fire at something like the MG team on its own, because the MG team isn't worth enough for it to like start firing at it. That is another thing to point out. But yeah, in general, how do I feel about the changes? I think is something that I should probably say. I feel like at the moment, having played, you know, a few games, not too many, Infantry is generally harder to counter than it was before, because airstrikes are less prevalent and artillery is less prevalent, and so there's more room for infantry to kind of move around without just being instantly dumpstered by like tosses or tornadoes, or in terms of like HIMARS or M270s, for example. So that's going to be something to account for. I think it needs testing for sure. Yeah, I think that like stacking infantry is just generally harder to punish than it was before. Also, helicopters, especially helicopters with strong ATGMs, are going to be really obnoxious. So like maybe the Comanche is going to be really difficult to deal with. The Longbow Guardian, like the, well, I should say the Guardian, not the Longbow Guardian, and then probably the Lemur. I think that's just going to be the most obnoxious, since it can also target infantry, and it one-shots a lot of like light armored vehicles. The Vassalok there, instantly targeting that unit. I think it must be like over 100 points, because I think the Cat Dragon there is like 90 or 100 points, so the Vassalok just instantly fired at that. But there you go. I mean, I think that's more or less everything that I wanted to show here. Obviously, I'm not going to try and win this game, but it should give you the gist of the changes that they're going for. More ASF gameplay, sort of interesting changes to aircraft, although aircraft will be less prevalent. You'll see it take ages for that Tupolev to be available again. We're already like 15, actually it's over 10 minutes into the game, because each phase in the skirmish is only 10 minutes, is the way I have it set up at the moment. But yeah, so in this case, like the Tupolev's not going to be available for like basically the entire game. But the Vassaloks are firing away. I did want to take a moment to talk about the game mode changes. At the top of the screen, you'll see that there's no longer a percentage for the amount of flags that you hold. Instead, what happens is, dependent on how many more flags you have than your opponent, there is a conquest point tick that either adds to your score or takes away from the enemy's. So in this case, you'll see that the enemy is losing conquest points and will be gaining conquest points over time. This continues until the war goals are covered. At the moment, I think that the tick is a little bit too fast for my liking, because you can hold only 1 point more than the enemy for the entire phase, and you'll end up with 3 war goals, which is a little much in my opinion. Maybe like 2 max would be nice. Otherwise, we might end up with like a lot of camping in the gameplay. Let me know what you think about the changes I've discussed in the comments. You should get access to the public test environment at some point. I can't really say when, but just look out for an announcement and get involved. Plan to make another video about the changes when the public test environment becomes available, so I'll give you guys an update on that and how to get involved. But otherwise, I'm probably just going to keep testing in private not show off too many PTE games, just because things are going to change so much and it's going to get very confusing with the live build as well. Until any of these changes hit the live build, do take everything that you've seen here with a pinch of salt. Just a reminder again that everything is subject to change. If you want more details on everything that's changing, then do feel free to jump on my Discord and join the Broken Arrow discussion channel. But that's it for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.